Buen, Buenas tardes, boa tarde, and good afternoon to everyone in attendance today. Welcome to our Global Perspectives on Race and Racism speaker series. My name is Dr. Jaira J. Harrington, Assistant Professor in the Black Studies Department at UIC. I will serve as moderator for today's talk, Victims of Development, the Afro-Colombian Population in Buenaventura, by Professor Mery Cuesta. Here's the rundown of today's schedule. First, I will provide some background about this series. Second, I will introduce our speaker and she will share her presentation. And last, we will have an open Q&A where comments in the chat will be acknowledged, and you can also raise your hand so that you can directly dialogue with our guest, and then we'll close for the afternoon. But before we begin, I would like to offer some background about the series. With support from the programming committees in the departments of Latin American and Latino Studies, Sociology, Global Asian Studies, and Gender and Women's Studies, the Department of Black Studies will host the Global Perspectives on Race and Racism speaker series for fall 2023. This interdisciplinary series features scholars with expertise across the world to address the global socio-historical, economic, and systemic effects of racism. These events will provide multiple perspectives through which participants can explore the global dynamics of racism. We will see that the phenomena of race not only intersect with citizenship, belonging, and constructs of the nation state, they also co-mingle with class, gender, sexuality, and ability. This series will highlight race and racism from a variety of disciplinary perspectives and geographic contexts. And today is our first day of the series for fall 2023. Today's speaker is Mery Cuesta, and Professor Cuesta is a proud Afro-feminist woman born in Medellin, Colombia, where she completed her undergraduate degree in international business. She has specializations in business management and senior management. Her project, when it comes to women, takes an intersectional racial ethnic approach to highlight the underexplored racialized components of gender-based wage gaps in Colombia. She completed a master's degree of business administration from University of Canada West. Prior to living and studying abroad in Canada, Mery was a Martin Luther King Jr. scholar and studied English in Colombia. Additionally, she participated as a member in Afros Unidos y Vivas collectives to educate and support the Afro-Colombian community. She was also a representative in the Young Leaders of the World program in South Korea to share her experiences as an Afro woman in Latin America with a global audience. And she comes to us to do the same today. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Cuesta, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful presentation. I'm so happy to be here. Also, I'm nervous, but still, it's something really amazing, this space to share our thoughts and our ideas about our community. So thank you very much for having me here. And also, people just welcome to this place just to discuss, to enrich our knowledge. So let's start with the presentation. I'm going to share my screen in this moment. Please let me know if you can see or not the presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, we're gonna start talking about the victims of development in Colombia, specifically in a department that has many issues about the violence and also how the development has displaced many people within like the country, especially in the Black communities that are always the most affected in the conflict and also the development of big cities. So I just want to share with you guys, give me 1 second, sorry. There's gonna be like a little bit about what I'm gonna do in this conversation. So I'll just have an overview of the chapter that many of you have read before. Second, we're gonna talk about the re-existence of Black communities in Colombia. Then I have some questions just to interact with you to know what are your thoughts about this. So, and then the conclusion. So we're gonna proceed with the first one, that is the overview of the chapter, that is victims of development. So just to have a little bit of context, the DANE, that is the National Administrative Department of Statistics, that is in charge of taking notes how growth the community, even within Colombia, in any part of Colombia, has growth or decrease and in the years, through the years. So they are in charge of like have present how many people of different ethnicities are in Colombia. So in 2018, you need to take into account that this is something from the government. The government, it's the owner of this, this department. In 2018, like they have a survey which they say approximately in Colombia, we are 9.34% of Afro-Colombians. We have different, within the Afro-Colombians, we have different population that is identify themselves as Black, Afro-Colombian, Rizal, and Palenquero. These are four the main ethnicities within the Black community in Colombia. So let me explain you a little bit about it. Afro-Colombians is people that is recognize itself as part of the Africa like culture, right? But we know that all the transatlantic commerce that were bringing all the slavers, people that were slave back into Latin America. So we consider ourselves as Afro-Colombian because even though we are in Colombia, we are Afro people from Africa. Rizal is the ones that are in the island of San Andres. That is a small island close to within the country. And Palenqueras are people that was born and raised in the Palenque, that is a free town of Black people. So taking that into account, they say that Black community in Colombia is 9.34%. And it's a surprise, not at all, it's a surprise for many people that we are just 9.34%. And what is a surprise? Because in Colombia, we are around 52.22 million people. So it means like they say we are like 4 or 5 million like Black people in Colombia, which is a lie for many others that don't believe on those statistics. Many other sources, international sources, there are around 25% of Afro-Colombians that are recognize themselves as Afro-Colombians. So there is a problem. They are trying to hide the population in Colombia that is Black because they don't want to invest in Black communities. So that is not a mystery. We all know that. We all know they don't want to invest in the development of Black communities in the Black lands. So they don't care about it. So that's why they hide the percentage, the real percentage of population in Colombia. So just bringing this information to you, just to have a context, how the population in Colombia is distributed. We identify ourselves as Afro-Colombians. Many of Black people in Colombia identify themselves as Afro-Colombians, others as Palenqueras, Raizals, depending on where they grew up. So yes, this is some like information and data that I want to bring to you just to have a big context about it. So then, talking about a specific place, Buenaventura. Buenaventura is a port that manage around 75% of Colombians' international trade goods. That is huge. That is mostly all the international goods that we have are just from that port. We have other ports in the Caribbean coast, but this is the most important one that is connecting to 300 ports around the world. So we know what is the importance of this port. But still, Buenaventura is as a port, but not as a city, because people just don't want to the community around the port develop as much as other ports in Colombia, for example, in Barranquilla, in other places in Colombia that have ports that are well developed. They invest in community, they invest in the growth of people, they invest because they care about it. But they don't care what is happening around the port, they don't care about people that is living for it. Many people from Buenaventura is working in the port, but others are hiding from the inside of the country just to work in the port. So that makes people just displaced from Buenaventura because they don't have any other opportunity to grow. So then I just wanted to show you, just to have for you a little bit context, how Buenaventura is, how is a city in Colombia, how the port is a short video, like 1 minute, just for you to know how the port is. So let me know if you can see the video. Okay, thank you. Okay, so before continue, I just want to know your thoughts about this video. What this video brings to your mind? What do you think about what you see on the video? Someone that wants to share like thoughts about the video, what the video shows you, like what do you think about the port, the area where the port is developed? What do you think about it? Do you have any idea like what the video is showing you about the port, the city? Because it shows a little bit about the city, but somehow it's not the completely reality, because if you see in the video, the city, it's beautiful, right? You see that city is well developed. However, this is not completely true, right? They are showing us just a small part of the problem. So with these videos, people just are hiding the reality behind it. We are seeing in the video like a beautiful city, a city like is enriched, that have beautiful like parks, areas for people just to enjoy. But this is something that doesn't show how people is just living behind that, right? So I don't know if you have any question about it or just want to share some thoughts, or we can just have it at the end of the presentation of the comments. So if you have any question, just raise your hand or just comment on the chat. I'm gonna continue with this. So continue with the conversation with Buenaventura's reality. I just had some like 10 thoughts and ideas about what the book could show about it, and also the reality, what is experienced. So we know the systematic actions against Afro-Colombian population is something that it's meaningful for us to develop. Every Black community has this problem within Colombia and also in other parts of the world, but I'm just talking about my reality, right? The systematic action was not built for Black people, for Afro-Colombian population. All the Black communities are mostly in the Pacific coast because they were trying to just hide from the slavers. So they are developing that area. However, the government didn't want to invest in those communities that were really important for them just to develop the traditions, the land, working in the land. So we know that it's a systematic actions that is just disturbing the community, the development of the community. The impact of development model that the government has in those communities is the most impact reason of displacement. They don't care what people's gonna be impact on a mega project. For example, now I just was reading that the government wants to build it is like a specific zone in Choco that is one of the areas where Black communities are. They want to build like in a specific area, a zone with no taxes to just have goods from other countries in Choco. In Choco, I mean, which is something that will affect community right away because there are no security for people there. Now we don't have any guarantees of protection. Most of the people doesn't like an stability, an economic stability. So they're just having that in mind. They're just having that we're gonna build this zone, a specific zone in El Choco, just to have resources for the interior of that, for Bogota, Medellin, that are the biggest cities in Colombia. The geopolitical significance, of course, is something that, based on where the Black community is located, they are going to invest. The conflict and violence, this is basically the consequence of any development project that doesn't want to invest in communities to develop around it. The human rights violations, all the consequence, mega projects and development plans, the denial of existence of Black communities. This is the main point that I was talking about at the beginning. They are trying to hide what reality is in Colombia. So the communities cannot just go to the Palacio de Justicia in Colombia, that is where the president just discussed all the laws. They cannot go there just to discuss and just to let them know what's wrong with the projects in the community, because they are denying the existence of the problem. The resistance and re-existence, that is something very, very important for Black communities. The gentrification, it's happening around the world. It's happening even more now after the COVID. Many foreign people is migrating to another countries and making everything expensive for people that is living in those areas. So this brings another kind of detriment to Colombians and also for Black communities that are the most impacted. And violence and development, of course. This is the point of each project that is not taking into account what people think about it. So just to have also the macro context of this, only in 2022, there were 4.8 million people internally displaced in Colombia. This is huge. I mean, we are the country, I think that we are in like the first place of countries with the most displaced, internal displaced people in the world because of the conflict. People don't want to move from their land. They don't want to move from another city that they don't know anything about. They just want to build their territory. They just want to build their ancestry. They just want to uh, have a family to care about in their territories because are our territories. So they are forced to displace to another and bigger cities just to take um, another opportunities because their places are not well developed. And also based on that, only for 2021, Buenaventura just report a total of 7,311 victims of the displacement, which is the 100% of the total victims of the department. It's like every people that has been displaced in Buenaventura have suffered all the consequences of the development. The port doesn't have any opportunity for people to grow there, just to be there. They have all the ways to lose. Black community in Buenaventura hasn't gained nothing for this port that is very important as you see. So that makes a thing like something is going better, like is wrong with this. Something is wrong with this. And it's not a mystery, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all that people from these places have been displaced. Then just as a small context for you, it's like in 2014, if you see the data, the victims of displacement, like more than the half of percent of that have been women. And of course, in the next chart, we can see like crimes against sexual freedom and integrity. Women's, I mean, are in the first place of being victims of this because men are the ones that are committing the crimes. So all of this that I'm showing to you is the consequences of people being displaced, of the conflict, of people that don't know what to do after it. Is the government doesn't have any presence in those places, and some like grupos armados, and specifically like crime. How can I say that? Is also it's like the grupos armados is like
Armed militias or armed groups?
the armed groups. Yeah, yeah, basically. Yes, thank you. They are taking the control of the territories because the government hasn't present there. So they are committing crimes against the human rights. For example, a story that I have to tell you about my family is like I was born in Medellin. I was born and raised in Medellin, but for a period of time, I used to live in El Choco in a town called Bagado. My family is from there. The first time that I went there that I just could remember it was approximately when I was 10 or 12. And it was the first time that I went there because my family didn't want to go there because they were displaced from that place. They were born in Bagado, but they have to take all they had in this place to Medellin, that is a bigger city, because there is a armed group called ELN, that means that is an armed group. Like I remember when I just get to my home, I saw a mark in the entrance of the wall, the marks of ELN. I remember that very clearly because it was the first time that I knew this is a conflict. I mean, this is violence. I didn't know that at the first. I I just tried to make my family explain what happened because also my house has like the ones like the holes of the guns in the wall. I was so impacted, and I didn't know how risky is that you just take all the things that you just have and left all that you have built there just to move to a city that they don't know anything about. And my family was displaced from that place, from Bagado, and moved to living in Medellin. And after that, the government just had the responsibility to recognize my family as a part of the violence, part of the conflict. But we know that the government and also the system was not built for us. I'm going to tell you more about it. So, what are the main consequences of development? We just have talked about it, but I just wanted to make sure we have that on mind. It's like displacement and violence. When all the armed groups taking control of the land, the government has no presence on it. So all the initiatives that prioritize economic growth going to be a reason of people just to move out from the places that are those projects carrying on. We know the government wants just economic growth for themselves. They don't want to develop the cities around it. They just want to develop the cities they want to and have an advantage of it. They don't have any advantage of just taking care about people that live surrounded or alongside the port. They don't care. So that's why they just see Buenaventura as a port. I'm just going to go to Buenaventura just because of the port, but not for people, not for the culture, not for know what is going on there. The violence in Buenaventura is one of the cities that have higher rates of violence because of that. They want to have the control of the traffic of drugs. And also the government just wants to bring more like militaries just to control that. But in the middle of that war, who is the civilian, the population? So they just want to fire guns. That they are just not having guarantees to protect people in between. And that is generating even more like violence. The loss of ancestral lands. Black communities historically have been marginalized for the system. So people lose their homes, their traditions. They have to change all the way they are just to fix in the system that probably will help them to develop. Then is the conflict and human rights abuse. We know what this carried, that like basically massacres, gender-based violence, as show you before, and mega projects and economic interest. We already know that economic interest is driving violence in those places. Yeah, just one you to have the whole panoramic. I don't know if you have any question or just want to comment something about it. If you have any thoughts, just remember letting me know or just raise your hand. And then the re-existence. I just have a question for you guys is, what do you know about re-existence? What do you think is re-existence? There's someone that wants to share in the group chat. Let's see. Someone, it's fine if you don't know about the re-existence.
There's a comment here from Sam, reestablishing the indigenous cultures that were wiped out during slavery and colonialism.
That's pretty good. Yes. Thank you very much for that comment. Yes, as you say, like re-existence is just resignificance, something that probably will lose, right? So for Black communities, this is very important, and even more for Black communities in Colombia that have been hide from the reality. I don't know if you knew, but many people don't know that Colombia is multicultural and pluri-ethnicity. So we have um, Black communities and indigenous community as well as mestizos in Colombia. And I have many friends that didn't know that Colombia has Black population. When the first time that I was in United States, I was talking in Spanish with my friends, and they were surprised that I was talking in Spanish because it's so weird for them to know that Black people can speak Spanish. But what they don't know is like all the process of the transatlantic trade carry many people to Latin America. There's Black people from Canada to Argentina. So that is something very important for Black community to know about re-existence. I'm sorry.
There's also one more comment here from Naomi that
Okay.
that also is dovetails what you just said. Re-existence to me is bringing back your presence after trying to be overshadowed for so long.
Perfect. Perfect. That is exactly what I want to try to show you. Like, live through the pain that been losing something. And one of the person that I want you to know is Erleni Cuero. She was like, she's still. She's 44 years old, a grandmother of 4. She left Buenaventura in the thousands when her father was murdered. So she was sexually assaulted, and her house was destroyed in the land of dispute. The thing that I was telling you, like the control of the territory for armored groups that are not that have presence in places where the government is not, just they are taking the control of the situation. So what is the other option that people has just to leave is move from the area, because there's no other option. They have the control of the land. So now, even though she has all this pain so alive in her like body, she is now the vice president of National Association of Displaced Afro-Descendants. She's working for people that had the same situation as well as she had. So for me, that is re-existence. It's also not, it's protecting the community. It's having in mind that even though the pain that I had suffered, even though I know, because her son also was harassed, she knows that she has to live for to save more lives, to know that she went through the pain of losing her father, and she makes a resignification of her life. She was sexually assaulted, and I think that could mark the life of any person in like with that situation. So for me, that is the meaning of re-existence. So
someone
now,
else has one quick comment, Mary.
yeah, of course.
Nina says re-existence also reminds me of resilience, going through pain, but still being able to live.
Exactly. Yes, that's very true. That's very true. It's like the pain is gonna still there. The pain is gonna be there forever, but also re-existence and just have a resignification of how to live now on, right? And this is what makes people so resilient in Colombia. Black people, Black communities are very resilient. Bojaya, for example, was a community that was bombed for the guerrilla at that time. And during these past years, the pain is still there, but people have a different meaning of life now. They are significant that strategy, um, just to show like Black people is still on the land. Black people still wants to be there and build a community. Because there's no other way we can do this without us, right? So
One more. Sam also adds
yeah,
something about community here. It makes me think of finding community is shared experiences of suffering, shouldering the burden of generational racism as a collective rather than as individuals. So that community aspect that you were pointing to.
yes, yes, absolutely. Like community making even stranger. I mean, they want to be there for community, do that for the community, and just grow with the community. If people like just don't want to know or they don't care about the community, Black community will disappear at all. But we are still there doing this for the community resistance together. And and as I was telling you before about the reparations system that we have in Colombia, we're supposed to have a system where all people that have been displaced or have been victim of any situation, circumstances in Colombia is being repaired for this for the government, because the government has to take care about people, like health or whatever thing that they want to needs to take care about. So we have a system that has 5 stages. Um, the first one is restitution. People that have been displaced for other places, just make sure they have not also the land, but also um, the the peace of being in their places, right? Restitution of the land, compensation for it, because some crimes um, are committing for the government. So compensation about it, rehabilitation, satisfaction after being in the first and the second stage. And the last one and the most important is guarantees of no repetition. My family, as the story that I was telling you before, was in the first stage. Then they just move on in the second stage. And we have never moved from the second stage because the government don't want to recognize all my family as a victim of the conflict. For example, they did not recognize myself as a victim of the conflict because they say that I was a child when the guerrilla just went to the town and take the town for their own. So they don't recognize that something like that happened to me because I cannot remember that. They assume that if you don't remember, it didn't happen. So my family was to they made the petition to be recognized in the victim system. They were in the first stage, and we have fighting for years to be compensated because of that. Um, we have never go or move from the third stage or fourth stage because they don't want to recognize us. And how you can prove it, how you can fight for it. I mean, there's no way to like just to prove that you were there. So the system is not with us, basically. The system also is denying that you were a victim, is reactivist, is doing something one over and over again. I mean, they are re-victimization people. So you know what I mean? It's like there's no guarantees or no repetition if they don't recognize people. There is a process that people from Buenaventura also wants to or have to do, but not all of them have been recognized into the system as a victim. And part of the resistance or resilience, I want to show you a short video about San Basilio de Palenque. I don't know if you know about it, but it was the first free town of Black people that was slave. So let me show you a little bit. Let me know if you can hear about it.
Oh, we're not able to hear Mary.
Oh, you're not able?
No.
Mary, if you go to where you're sharing the button where you click to share screen, if you also click share sound, we should be able to hear the video then.
Okay. Okay. That is weird. Wait a minute. Sorry, can you please let me know again where can I share the sound?
So at the bottom of your screen where it says share screen, you should, it might be under advanced sharing options. You just have to allow your computer to share sound and visuals.
Let's see. Oh.
First, Mary, stop your sharing.
Okay, I will stop sharing.
And then enter again with share screen and click on share sound.
Share sound. Gotcha.
Thank you, Digna, for putting that in the chat.
Gracias, Digna.
Thank you. 1 second.
The walled city of Cartagena on Colombia's Caribbean coast.
You can hear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
And if the video does have closed captioning, Mary, if you can click that, that would be great.
Okay.
The walled city of Cartagena on Colombia's Caribbean coast, founded in the 16th century to become a key port of entry for African slaves. The same slaves who carved out this canal by hand, connecting the Caribbean to the Magdalena River. But in 1599, a small group of slaves escaped and established a secret community 50 kilometers away in what was a dense tropical rainforest. Today, descendants of the founders of San Basilio de Palenque, the very first free black town of the Americas, still venerate Bencos Viejo, the slave who led them to freedom.
I am from Palenque, which carries with it respect. Palenques are respected wherever they go, so I am proud to be a black man from Palenque.
San Basilio's 4,000 residents continue to live mainly from livestock and agriculture and preserve their ancestors' language, which is taught at school. Barbara Herrera, who grows peanuts, tells us in Palenquero that it was invented to fool the white man. Her recipe for peanut balls was handed down from her ancestors. We are also treated to a sample of Combile Sami's music. It combines rap and reggae with traditional African instruments and sung in Palenquero. Indeed, the connection here with Africa is still remarkably strong.
The Palenquero feels African. For example, every time an African team plays in the World Cup, even if it's against Colombia, that's whom we'll cheer for.
This is San Basilio de Palenque's cemetery. Even now, people tell us that when they die, their souls go to join their ancestors, but not here in Colombia, but rather in Africa.
The town has been named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, not just because of its history, but because of the Palenqueros' determination to keep their identity and heritage alive, more than 400 years after their ancestors cut off their chains. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, San Basilio de Palenque, Colombia.
So, well, this is a short video about San Basilio de Palenque. I don't know if you already knew about San Basilio de Palenque. Do you know something about, do you want to share about it? Thoughts about San Basilio de Palenque, what they makes you feel? If you want to share, just put it in the comments and also let me know, raise your hand. So, well, the next slide, I mean,
One
something
moment,
that,
Mary, please.
oh yeah.
Yvonne has their hand up. Yvonne, would you like to?
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. But like looking at that, it just reminds me of what's in my own cultural background. I just did a 23andMe and found out, you know, all of the different parts of Africa, right, that's in my DNA. So this is very enlightening for me to see that we're still connected to our African roots, even though, you know, we're now living in different spaces, and why it's important for me to be here today. So thank you for making those connections. Wow.
Thank you very much for it. And yeah, that is huge, how we can still connect with our diaspora. It's fascinating how we are in somehow we have same traditions, we have the same issues, and also we are connecting to through the traditions and the love for our culture. So thank you very much for that, and I'm so happy for it that you already feel connect. That was exactly what I want to share to you, that the connection that we still have, even though people didn't know that Colombia has Black community and indigenous as well. So just to remind
One
us.
more comment here.
Yeah, of course.
Brianna says, I really love how music has continued to connect African people to their African roots around the world. So she was very taken by the music there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's so amazing how we are still like taking all the traditions, right? It's just we're still doing it, and I love it. I really love that. Thank you very much. And so the transatlantic slave trade, we already know about it. But also it's like, as you were saying before, how we're still connecting. I mean, even when Africa is a huge continent, is one of the biggest continents, how we still have the traditions, how we still keep that alive. It's very important for us to keep showing the resistance and resilience we have been going through the years, knowing that. So and this is one basically something that I want to bring to you, some questions that I had regarding the book and also regarding all the situations that I have been telling you before. And I have 3 questions. I had more, but I think that 3 are good enough just to know your thoughts, and how the economic growth in some parts of the world have been displaced Black communities, and how the economic don't worry about Black communities. So I have just 3 main questions. If you are just willing to answer one of them, that will be like meaningful, just to share thoughts, to discuss about it. And yeah, the first question is, what economic development projects or initiatives have been introduced in areas with significant Black populations, and what are their effects? The second one is like, what actions or solutions, if any, do you think should be taken to address the concern raised about Afro-Colombian victims? If you have any idea, I mean, not only for Afro-Colombian victims, but also for other communities, Black communities around the world that have the same issues. And how do you perceive the role of businesses in addressing economic inequalities and promoting social justice in Black communities? So if you want to share something about it, just to comment or not, you don't need to answer those questions, just to have any comment regarding the presentation, that will be nice. If not, it's fine. And yeah, I don't know if you wants to say something. share your thoughts.
Yvonne, please. You have your hand.
So one of the things I've been thinking about, when I travel outside of, the United States, and I look at the different cultural spaces that I go to, it's usually a black or brown space. And so we understand that some of us, we understand that we're connected to our African roots. And so as I've been doing this traveling, I've been thinking about business, right? How can we do business with each other across the diaspora? And so what that looked like for me is getting involved with locals, from the area to, expand what it is they do, over here in America, right? Because I just recently found out that the SBA here gives us opportunities to do business in other countries. And so, not really taking up these ways of being that we can show up differently for each other, building a community across the diaspora, because that's all I think about when I go to these other spaces. It's not just to experience, a different culture and just to be in their space or just to say, oh, wow, I went here, but really immersing myself in the ideas of the people. What do they want and how do they see themselves? It's a conversation that I really like to have, with anybody, that's in these countries that are experiencing economic displacement, right? Because you can't take care of yourself how you need to. It's basic human needs, and it's just uncivilized to me to see.
Awesome is exactly what I'm thinking about it. It's like how we can just do more in the places that we are visiting where we know it's Black community. It's just invest in Black communities. I mean, it's just make the money just circulate within the Black community, make it grow our community, because I mean, we need to be in powerful spaces. We need to own our spaces. We need to resist in our spaces. So the economic development within the Black community is the first stage to for our wellness. It's the first stage for us to be in a better conditions, right? Invest within the community, then the money needs to move it. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, appreciate it. So, well, if you don't have any more thoughts about it or comments, the conclusion for me is not something that I'm just going to tell you. It's something that we already discussed here, because all the ideas are equally valued, and all the ideas that we got from this conversation are valued. So for me, the conclusion is basically that you already know something about Colombia. You just have any other idea about how Black communities in Colombia are developed, and also just thinking about the actions that we need to address, and also what are the problems that connect us, and also what are the situations that keep us alive and resistance in this world. So that's it. So if you have any other question, if you want just to share something, just let me know. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Mery. That was excellent.
You.
Thank you for that fascinating presentation and your reflections about community, about resistance, and all of these elements of resistance within the Black community in Colombia around territory, around development. It gives us a new perspective on thinking about race and racism, and we are so fortunate to have you join us. So now we will welcome any comments, questions, and reflections from the viewing public. There is one chat here that is generating some conversation as well. So Brianna says, I think land reparations are very important, meaning just restoring areas that have been affected by government control and letting those back communities have their homes back, as well as those armed militias and governments moving their business elsewhere. It just reminds me of US militaries making naval bases in their territories that were forcibly taken. And Professor Jewell says, I agree, societies based in settler colonialism must address the issue of land as part of reparations. There's a few more comments here. Sam says, I think the last comment about finding ways to be a positive tourist is interesting. Corporations tend to dominate this important revenue stream, and the money never trickles down to the people. We need more resources on how we can travel and experience the world without hurting the people we are visiting. So many others are thanking you for your presentation, Mery. It's a wonderful insight that you've given us today. So thank you so much. Now, if there are any questions that anyone has or any comments that you'd like to share with our guests, we'd love to have them. I also have a few questions of my own that maybe we could talk about.
Of course.
So maybe to get us started, something that stuck out to me about the port city of Buenaventura is that it is, you mentioned this startling statistic that 75% of international goods for the entire country pass through this port. Now, I wonder, as we're talking about Black businesses, are Black businesses involved with this port? Are there Black owned and operated businesses that have ties to this port? Or do you find that Black population connection to the port are much more as shipping and receiving? Or what is the status of Black communities and their involvement in what seems to be this huge space for economic opportunity in that city? What does it look like? Do you know?
Well, I don't have exactly the information, but Black community is not involved as much as we want to in that trade of goods in the port. Basically, the space of power that are within all the port system are owned by people from Bogota, people from Medellin, people that are from the interior of the country. So people that is managing surrounding areas of the port is the Black communities that is just in those kind of works, just taking out the goods, all those kind of jobs that Buenaventura community has. They are not in the power spaces. So that's why the growth of the community is not the same one, because they don't have a space there. They are not connecting with the poor as much as we want to. So that is something that implicates Black community being more involved on the actions. That should be a really good panoramic about it. That should be the perfect situation. Yeah, Black community being involved on all the port situation, but it's not like that. It's not a good percentage of Black community involved on the decisions. Power systems are just held, right? So yeah, it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise because we know how the system was built and who was the person that was in charge of it. So it's a shame. It's a shame that we cannot have any revenue from it.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Or any, something that Mery mentioned a little bit earlier was that in coming to the United States and talking about her heritage and being from Colombia, that some people were very surprised that there were Black communities there.
Yeah.
Is that, so if you could speak more about that, or maybe also those who are listening in, was seeing images of palenques or thinking about Black communities, was that something that was newer to you or something that you might explore in the future? Were you aware of this?
Yeah, I was thinking about it like last week. I'm living in Canada, and that there are people from around the world. And when I was talking with people, they thought I was from United States. They never, they never could imagine I was from Latin America. And also, like at the end of the day, they thought I was from Africa, any country for Africa, but they could never have on mind that Latin America has Black communities, and also even more people like speak Spanish, Black people that speak Spanish. So that was something that I just discovered when I exit the country. I didn't know that people outside my country didn't know that we have Black community in Colombia. It's so shocking for people to, when I let them know that I'm recognize myself as a Afro-Colombian that speaks Spanish. They are like, I didn't know that Colombia has Black people. And they, yes, they are. I mean, we have the longest, the largest Afro descendants population in Latin America, uh, just after Brazil. So for me, it's shocked that people don't know that, but I'm not surprised because the history have been hide most of the this part of our story. So have been shocked. I mean, I didn't expect that from people around the world that didn't know that. Even I have a friend that is Black from United States, and he didn't know the first time that he went to Colombia, he didn't know that there were Black people. He was surprised, and I was like, okay, that's shocking. That's shocked. But yeah, it's sometimes you don't know how to deal with that situation that people just shocked. I don't know, because they think that you need to start to tell them the story about it. Why you speak Spanish? They are just waiting for you to tell the whole story about why you speak Spanish, being a Black person. And has been strange for me just being living in the north of the continent.
Yes, and Canada has its own kind of
Yeah.
racial history as well.
Yes.
That we don't often hear too much about, But yes, Digna also asked the question is, how did you learn Spanish when it's
yes.
the first language?
You speak Spanish very well. It's like,
yes. What a compliment. Your Spanish is so good. Okay.
Yeah.
And Professor Jewell mentions that this is shocking given the map that you've shown and just the kind of increasing public knowledge about the transatlantic slave trade, that there are reports everywhere. And so this idea that Blackness is somehow monolithic or limited to a language or limited to a geography, it's disappointing, but also given the contours of what it is that you mentioned earlier, the kind of active repression of this knowledge, the kind of active repression of these histories that is not often widely taught. And some of my students who are present here today has shared in earlier class sessions that their knowledge of this kind of global understanding of Blackness or these global connections and links, they did not encounter, some did not encounter until undergraduate study. And so it's disappointing, but in so many ways, it's also not surprising, as you shared. Yvonne has something to add as well, please.
You took all the words from me, Dr. Aaron. So my apologies that, now I'm coming in after you and maybe sound like a repeat, but when I went to Cuba a few years ago, I was surprised to see Black people too, because that's not what's portrayed on TV. It's like they only show you, what they want you to see. And so when I started traveling outside of America, that's when I began to see all of the different other ethnic groups that look like me, but they speak different languages. And so that's why Black studies was so important to me, and getting to understand that these studies will take you everywhere. It's not just about living in America and what you can do with this in America, but you can really take your education in Black studies and take it anywhere and be welcomed because you understand the narrative of where you come from. What are your roots? You know, so Jabir wanted to always make sure that I can tell a story. And so I'm glad that he did, because this is how I engage in those communities when you travel outside of America. Storytelling is huge in other spaces. Not so much here because they don't believe what we say, because, you know, I'm sarcastically speaking, you know, you don't know your own history. You know? So it's really strange. It's really strange. But thank you so much for all of this. It's really making me connect so many different dots that, you know, I've already started connecting, but this is really, really helpful for me in the work that I'm getting ready to start doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Thank you for just appreciating what I'm just showing you, and also like just to show my story, my own story about like being displaced. It's like something that I have very like on my mind, the way I'm feeling when I just with people that have been displaced. It's like I feel you, right? I feel you. I know there's a struggle that we need to address deeper in Colombia from the power positions. We need to be in the power positions as a Black community. When we're fighting for it, we are just trying to unify ourselves. And that it's amazing just to connect, to know another narrative that we have in Colombia, because the story of Colombia, and even for any Black community, didn't start with the slavery. So that is amazing too, just to talk about and to discuss. Thank you very much.
And one last question. We only have a few minutes left before we close at 45. Alex says, hi, Mary, a little off topic, but did the 2014 FIFA World Cup bring a sense of unity for many Colombians? They had a great run, but were eliminated by Brazil. So did that sport experience unify Colombia in any sort of way?
You know what? I think that that is a good question. I have my thoughts about how the sports are developing in Colombia. So when Colombia needs someone just to be represented outside of the country, they choose the best athletes. Many of them are Black, right? The Colombian selection have many Black players, but still, compared to another, like other players, they are still being discriminated. They're still being marginalized because the payments for them is not equal, starting there. So the selection itself has an issue, right? That we all know, because there's gonna be a difference between Black players and white players. The feeling of being unified through the sports is a false sensation of unity, right? Because they are only giving us that unity. Meanwhile, the match is just carrying on, right? We are unified just to be there in the match. But after it, I don't recognize yourself. I recognize yourself as a part of the Black community. It's just a false sensation of unity. So I don't think so that the World Cup just have a feeling of unity, but it shows even more how people don't know about Colombia, right? It shows like how people didn't know that the athletes that are playing on the match and even in the selection also are Black and they speak Spanish. So I think that talking in the sport area, we have many other struggles to solve. So yeah, basically, I don't think there is a sensation. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation, for all of the thoughtful comments and questions. Thank you for keeping all of us engaged. And thank you for participants who came to listen and absorb all this information. We will return on this Thursday, September 28th at 12:30 p.m. with Digna Paola Mosquera, and her remarks will cover the topic Life in Ancestral Territories, Vivir Sabroso. So please join us then. And that is all we have for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Looking
so
forward to
much
seeing
for
you
being here.
soon.
Thank you.